1954 is considered by many train enthusiasts as Lionel's finest year of production. The introduction of the Lackawanna Trainmaster, the Southern F3s in an ABA combination, the Santa Fe Super Streamliner with the brand new for 54 baggage car, and 7 new and colorful 64/64 boxcars. Lionel proclaimed a choice of brilliant colors and authentic famous railroad heralds had been added to their line. The first sets featured in the 1954 catalog were inexpensive starter sets, and Lionel began by targeting sales to a younger generation. Young engineers will love these two trains.
Set 1500, dubbed the Merchantman, was attractively priced at $19.95, Lionel hoping to catch the eye of Junior's parents. This set is also called a semi-scout by collectors because the trucks for each car used a combination of scout-type side frames and bracket, together with a knuckle coupler, which was the standard coupler. The first Scout sets were cataloged in 1948, but had a Scout coupler instead of a knuckle. Sets like these are called True Scouts. Since the Scout coupler was not compatible with the standard knuckle coupler, Lionel discontinued making True Scout sets in 1953. The last year of production for a semi-Scout was set 1500 in 1954.
Set 1513S, called the Clearback Special, included a die-cast steam locomotive with smoke, non-whistle tender, and 4 common freight cars. However, this set is known to contain the rare yellow-painted 6015 Sunoco single-dome tank car with rubber-stamped lettering.
The common version had rubber-stamped lettering over a yellow plastic body. Set 1503 WS, headed by a 2055 die-cast locomotive with smoke and 6026W whistle tender, was called the Overlander. This set hasn't stirred much collector interest, probably because it was also cataloged in 1953 with the same set number. However, by looking at both sets in the catalog, it's plain to see the 1953 set depicted a black gondola and hopper, whereas the 1954 set had a green gondola and red hopper. The green gondola, 6462-25, was new in 1954 and came with 6 wooden barrels. This example has the letter N in New York Central in the second panel from the side of the car. Later we'll learn how this changed. Since this set was basically the same as 1953, it was probably produced early in the production year, a conclusion reached by examining the original box for the gondola. When the set was being assembled, Lionel didn't have in stock a specific box for their new green gondola. Since an ongoing practice at Lionel was to use up whatever they had available in stock, all they did was use a black gondola box, already in stock, and stamp the new data for the green gondola. By comparing this overstamped box with the regular black gondola box, we can see the number 25 and the word green were stamped. You've probably noticed the green gondola has 6 smaller stained barrels rather than the larger white ones depicted in the catalog. These smaller stained barrels were used with the brand new operating barrel car and the operating barrel loader, which was introduced in 1952.
Set 1515 WS was headed by the new 2065 steam locomotive with smoke and 2046W whistle tender. Called the All-State Freight, it's not in demand by collectors because of its common array of rolling stock. The gray Lehigh Valley hopper, 6456-25, was brand new. The suffix number 25 is on the box, not on the car. One of the more valuable 027 sets is the Gandy Dancer work train, set number 1523. Originally priced at $49.95, We have seen examples priced as high as $1,000 for a box set in like new condition. This set featured two new colorful cars. The gray-painted 6456-25 Lehigh Valley Hopper and red-painted 6460-25 operating work crane. Lionel announced a choice of brilliant colors, and they have kept their word.
The 6419-25 work caboose is new. The 25 suffix is on the box, not on the car, and indicates the absence of a rear coupler. The 6511 pipe car rounded out a fabulous set. The 6250 Seaboard was brand new and a colorful addition to the Lionel line. It was the fifth diesel switcher in the series. After a 3-year absence, a switcher once again heads a Lionel train set instead of only being offered for separate sale, as was the case with the 623 Santa Fe and 624 C&O. Boy, is she a smooth runner.
The 6250 was not shown in the catalog for separate sale until 1955, and it's not known whether these were from leftover 1954 inventory, an actual 1955 production run, or a combination of both. There are 3 known variations.
The Seaboard switchers had the number 6250 heat stamped and the logo decaled on both sides of the cab. The variations, however, had to do with the way the Seaboard lettering was applied to the side of the shell. They were either decaled or rubber stamped. Set 1523 came with the first and most common variation, as the Seaboard lettering is decaled. The rubber stamped version of the Seaboard was probably produced in 1955, and there were 2 types. The first had closely spaced lettering, while the second had widely spaced lettering that rested flush on the molded door panels. During the early 1970s, many Lionel service stations in the Chicagoland area had rubber-stamped Seaboard switcher shells in stock. This may be the reason so many brand-new rubber-stamped shells are offered for sale on used frames.
The Skylark 3-car passenger set, 1516 WS, is the very first passenger set offered in 1954 and is a tough set to find. The die-cast 2065 locomotive with smoke is another new addition to the Lionel line. The 2065 was the top-of-the-line 027 steam locomotive for 1954, as it appeared in 4 catalog sets.
When discussing variations, the much harder to find rubber-stamped version of the 2065 is usually associated with this set. This locomotive on the left has a number 2065 rubber-stamped on the cab in silver. The one on the right has white lettering that's indented into the metal casting. This process is often referred to as heat stamping, although the term die stamping is the more correct terminology. The 2434 Newark Pullman, 2432 Clifton Vistadome, and 2436 Summit Observation were all brand new 1954 passenger cars. Furthermore, this was the very first time a Vistadome was offered in the 027 line. These same 3 passenger cars were cataloged through 1956. Paul Ambrose, in the 1990 classic Greenberg's Guide to Lionel Trains, 1945 to 1969, Volume 3, Sets, explains that the original box for all 3 cars were a bit longer and a shade narrower than their 1955 counterparts, and the component boxes for 1954 passenger cars must have the stock numbers shown on all 4 sides. The inner flap numbers also are different.
The Texas Fast Freight is headed by a 2245 Texas Special. The Texas Special, new for 54, is offered in an AB combination instead of the usual AA. This set included 4 new cars: the 6464-225 Southern Pacific boxcar, a 6561 cable car with orange reels, a 6462-25 green gondola, and a 6427 Lionel Lines caboose. A 2065 locomotive headed set 1519 WS and 1521 WS.
Both sets included a fine array of freight cars, and a scarce variation can sometimes be found in each set. The majority of 3482 operating milk cars produced in 1954 had the number heat stamped on the top left and the bottom right. The scarce car, which was sometimes included in set 1519 WS, had the number 3472 stamped bottom right. Although it's not a scarce car, the 6462-75 red painted gondola was brand new to the Lionel line and a colorful addition to this set. The letter N was in the second panel from the left, just like the green gondola mentioned earlier. The 3562 operating barrel car, included in set 1521 WS, was new and a favorite with collectors. It was painted black with white heat stamp lettering and is very hard to find in excellent condition. The majority of 3562s had a black trowel on which 6 barrels rested. This scarce variation has a yellow trowel. One interesting side note was the whistle tender. Set 1519 WS had a 6026W, while set 1521 WS had a 2046W.
Valued at over $2,000 in today's collector market, the flashing star of the Southwest is set 1520W. Of course, to have the highest value, the 2245 must be in light new condition with crisp, bright colors and decals. The Fireball Express, set 2201 WS, was headed by a 665 locomotive with smoke and whistle tender. The same set was also cataloged by Lionel in 1953, but featured a 685 locomotive instead. The Freightmaster, set 2217 WS, featured the most desirable and valuable of the steam turbines, the 682. The white rubber stamped stripe along the running board and added oil lubricator linkage accents the piece and made it noticeably different from earlier turbines like this 681 from 1953.
The Pennsylvania whistle tender 2046W-50 had the number rubber stamped in silver on the bottom of the frame. The original box with inner flap 2046-85 had Pennsylvania information at each end. This set included the 6464-175 Rock Island boxcar and 3562-25 operating barrel car. Both had blue heat stamp lettering. Sometimes the more desirable and rarer 6464-175 with black heat stamp lettering or the 3562-25 with red heat stamp lettering were substituted for the more common cars. This substitution, of course, would make the set more valuable. The original sets we've researched had the Rock Island in a Minneapolis and St. Louis box that had the name blocked out and the letter S and the word silver added to all box sides. The 6356 stock car and 6417 Pennsylvania caboose rounded out the set.
The Thunderbird, set 2219W, contained the new Fairbanks Morse Power Giant, the 2321 Lackawanna.
The gray roof Lackawanna is common with this set. Some train guides have stated incorrectly that the gray roof version wasn't made until 1955. Research of original 1954 sets, however, that included the gray roof Lackawanna have backed our conclusions.
If you remove the shell from the Lackawanna, you'll find strips of tape that hold the wire in place by the motors. Don't remove them, they're original.
The new improved 494 operating rotary beacon replaced the earlier style 394. They actually looked the same, except the 394 used heat in order to make the lens housing rotate, whereas the 494 used an electric driving coil and rubber driving washer. The 494 starts right up. The 394 is still warming up, a sure improvement. The Diamond Express set 2221WS was headed by a 646 locomotive with a 2046W whistle tender and 5 common freight cars. Even so, the 6468 B&O automobile car should have the new engraved knuckle in order to distinguish it from a 1953 knuckle, which was smooth. On occasion, Lionel substituted a red 6456 Lehigh Valley hopper for the gray 6456-25 or a 6417 Pennsylvania caboose for the 6417-25 Lionel lines, which were the cars depicted in the catalog.
A real controversial car is the 3620 operating searchlight car. Even though it's illustrated with an orange searchlight housing, the 3620 is almost always found with a gray housing. Some searchlight housings were made of orange plastic and then painted gray. These examples are much harder to find. The gray paint on this searchlight housing has begun to crack, revealing orange plastic. Because gray paint can be easily removed without damaging the orange plastic housing, our advice is buyer beware. Set 2223W, the Big Haul, was cataloged with a gray roof Lackawanna, 6464-100 boxcar, operating lumber and milk cars, red gondola, and gray Lehigh Valley caboose. This set included variations that make it highly desirable.
With the maroon roof Lackawanna instead of gray and blue feather Western Pacific rather than yellow, it is the most valuable set of 1954.
The first blue feathered cars produced were probably displayed at Toy Fair and are extremely rare. The most pronounced difference is instead of the 6464-100 number, the car is stamped 1954. Roger Karp's article in the February 91 issue of Classic Toy Trains explained what the real Western Pacific Railroad had to offer. This set also includes the red painted gondola with the N in the third panel, 3 lines of data, and a built date. It is numbered 6462-100 on the box only. Another third panel variation exists, a red unpainted plastic body numbered 6462-125, box only. The caboose featured in this set is the gray painted Lehigh Valley, numbered 6417-50 on the box only. It was not offered for separate sale. A rare variation of this caboose is the Tuscan painted version. The first O-gauge passenger set shows up as the mainliner, set 2222WS. The mighty 646 pulls a 3-car lineup of a baggage car, Vistadome, and Observation. This is the set that will most often contain the scarce large door version of the baggage car instead of the small door. The 736 made its only appearance in 1954 as part of set 2225WS, the Troubleshooter. The cars in this 5-car work freight are common.
The 3461-25 green lumber car came in a small box with the letter X when offered in set form. The black plastic bin was placed separately within the set box. When offered for separate sale, the box was enlarged to include the bin and the X was removed. The gray 3562-25 operating barrel car had heat stamp lettering that came in several shades of blue. Collectors referred to the 2 most dominant shades as navy and royal blue.
The Santa Fe headed set 2227W, the Golden West Special. The New York Central led the way for set 2229W, Water Level Limited.
At first glance, it appeared both sets featured the same lineup of common rolling stock. However, these 2 sets included a 6456-75 red Lehigh Valley hopper with yellow heat stamp lettering. This hopper is referred to by collectors as the glossy or tomato red version and is very hard to find in excellent condition. Of course, a collector could get real lucky and find the super rare version that had white heat stamp lettering.
The Great Southern Freight, set 2231W, included the brand new 2356 Southern in a more desirable ABA combination. The cars featured have aroused little collector interest, but an original box set is still a welcome addition to any collection. This is one set many adults of today remember when reminiscing about 1954.
In 1954, two modifications occur. The top bar of the pilot opening was removed to ease coupler assembly. The bottom portion of the pilot was equalized by leveling the right and left side of the notch. This change is apparent in the power unit, but not always in the dummy. Also included in the set was a 6417-25 Lionel Lines caboose. The number is printed on the box only, while the caboose is heat stamped 64173. A very rare gray painted version exists with red heat stamped lettering.
Also pictured with the Southern was the 50 gang car, which was brand new. This motorized unit ran under its own power and changed direction when it came in contact with an engine, freight car, or bumper. Most of the time it was actually a child's hand that caused the gang car to change direction. The gang car is still a favorite today with kids of all ages.
Most gang cars had blue bumpers, two blue fixed men, a green swivel man, and support casting added to the frame. Originally priced at $7.95, this common version can be found at train meets or hobby shops, priced usually in the neighborhood of $75 to $100.
There was an earlier example that had gray bumpers, two green fixed men, one blue swivel man, in the earliest frame. This rare example has been known to command as much as $2,000. The last set depicted in a 1954 consumer catalog is the Emperor Chief, or Super Streamliner, as dubbed by both Lionel and collectors. Set 2234W is headed by a 2353 Santa Fe AA and comes with a complement of 4 passenger cars, including a small door baggage, Vistadome, Pullman, and Observation. This was probably the last catalog set produced, and by this time Lionel had exhausted their supply of large door baggage cars.
The graphics for the first 6464s were stamped on a Type 1 body. There were 4 complete rows of rivets to the right of the sliding door and 1 complete and 3 incomplete to the left. Lionel promised brilliant colors and authentic famous railroad heralds, so the rows of rivets changed in 1954 in order to accommodate the newer graphics. There were now 3 complete rows to the right of the sliding door and the removal of 4 rivets from one of the incomplete rows to the left. Collectors refer to this new body as Type 2. Of the first 4 6464s, only a handful of Western Pacific and Minneapolis and St. Louis boxcars are known to exist with Type 2 bodies. These cars are extremely rare. The 6464-100 Western Pacific with the yellow feather had rubber stamp lettering. It's common in a Type 2 body and a lot harder to find in a Type 1. There is also a variation with the length of the feather. One is a little longer than the other. The long feather version is much harder to find than the short. The 6464-125 New York Central pacemaker with heat stamp lettering came on a Type 2 body. Some cars have gray painted rows of rivets along the top. Others are unpainted and remain red. The 6464-150 Missouri Pacific with rubber stamp lettering came on a Type 2 body. The Mopac had 3 basic colors: dark blue, almost purple, navy blue, considered medium, and royal blue, light. In 1954, there were 2 production runs of this car. Dark blue was the predominant color for the earlier run. All cars had a yellow plastic door with a gray painted stripe. The word eagle is large. The first letter is 3/4 inches high, and on the right side of the door is new 354. On the left is 6464-150, and in the second panel, the Missouri Pacific Herald. The second run probably included cars with all three shades. Everything remained the same except the new 354 is now on the left, and built by Lionel and XME have been added to the right. The 6464-200 Pennsylvania was heat stamped and came in both a Type 1 and Type 2 body. Type 1 is a little harder to find.
The 6464-225 Southern Pacific boxcar with rubber stamped lettering was offered in set 1517W and also for separate sale. It's extremely rare with a Type 1 body. The 6446 cement car and 6672 refrigerator car were offered for separate sale. The cement car, with Norfolk and Western markings, was a realistic scale model of cars used on real railroads. To add some play value, the 12 hatches located on top of the car could be opened and closed by hand.
There were two versions of the 6446. Both cars were stamped with the same number and graphics. However, Lionel then changed colors and assigned different part numbers. The first version was 6446-1, a gray hopper with black heat stamp lettering. The second version was a 6446-25, a black hopper with white heat stamp lettering.
The Lionel service manual conveniently color-coded each part by number. So if you needed to replace a gray hatch, the part number was 6446-11. A black hatch was 6446-33. The 6672 with Santa Fe markings was another fine addition to the Lionel line. It was modeled after the Santa Fe mechanical temperature-controlled refrigerator car, SFRD 3175. The car door first had to be sprung forward by hand before it could be completely opened. And for added play value, each car had a control panel board, fully equipped with a sliding door panel.
There were two versions of the 6672, one quite common, the other very rare. Both versions had graphics heat stamped in blue. To the right of the door of the common version were 2 lines of data. On the rarer version, there were 3 lines of data. Although the 6672 was cataloged with black lettering, the blue letter versions were probably the only ones available in 1954. As mentioned earlier, the green painted gondola 6462-25 came with the end stamped in the second panel from the left of the car. The green 6462-25 with the end in the third panel, as well as second panel, were 1954 separate sale items and also part of set 2219W.
The 3484-25 was introduced in 1954. The majority of boxcars were stamped over a Type 1 body, and there are 3 variations, of which one is very rare.
The easier to find variations were either rubber stamped or heat stamped with the appropriate Santa Fe markings in white lettering. The rubber stamped version appears to be the hardest to find of the 2 cars. The first car produced, and one that matched the catalog illustration, had black heat stamped lettering and is very rare.
The 6356 made its debut in 1954. There are 4 primary variations.
Besides the regular car graphics, the first variation had built by Lionel, heat stamped in small letters to the bottom left of the sliding door. This would be a primary variation because whether the car is mint or used, it's easy to recognize. The second variation had built by Lionel heat stamped in large letters to the bottom left of the sliding door. The major difference between this car and variation number 2 is the graphics were rubber stamped instead of heat stamped. This variation is the hardest to find. In 1955, Lionel added a small tab to the bottom of the truck, which made uncoupling by hand much easier. The original box had a 6356-24 inner flap number instead of 6356-20. The addition of the tab and the new box proved that 1955 wasn't a carryover of 1954 inventory and makes this variation necessary to complete the sequence.
(1954) was truly a great year for Lionel, too. Their annual report to stockholders showed a net income of $1,300,168.